Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. On this episode, I'm joined by Vincent LaRussa and Jason Herndon. In the first 20 minutes or so, Jason's going to give us an update on the Slaughter package he's working on, Fear No Evil. It's an exciting release, I think you guys are going to really enjoy it, and Jason gives us a great update on that. After that, we talk about the grunge scene in the early 90s, and our thoughts on it killing off the music that so many of us love. We'll also discuss and debate whether or not we think Nirvana's Nevermind album is overrated. There's so much to cover in this episode. It's a lot of fun. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. So let's jump in and let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. Today I'm excited to have with me two guests, both been on the show plenty of times before. First off, Mr. Vincent LaRussa, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well, thank you for having me again.
Absolutely,
Yay.
yeah, the crowd cheers for Vincent. Woo-hoo. And back for the third time on the show, Jason Herndon. How you doing, Jason?
I'm good. Thanks for inviting me on for this lovely topic.
Yeah, actually, this started with a post, and I don't want to just jump right in for a moment, right? But this started with a post I made on my Facebook page, and you made a comment on it, and you were like, "This would be a good podcast episode." I'm like, "Ding! It is." You're right. So you're actually the reason we're all together on this today.
Great.
But before we do that, Jason, the last time you were on, we were talking about this before, was the end of June, and we had actually somebody better than Vinny on with us. We had Mark Slaughter, right? So you were talking about the project you're working on. No problem. Well, it could have been anybody and would have been better than you, Vince.
This is childhood revenge. This is childhood revenge. That's what they call that. Yeah.
That is right. But we were talking about the project you're working on with Mark. So you want to give an update on that?
No. Thanks.
Okay.
Let's go to the next one. Yeah.
Obviously, everybody knows there's a lot of trouble right now pressing vinyl, right? So
That's right. That's right.
I'm assuming that's why you're saying no, right?
That's exactly why.
You're not alone in that.
We haven't given a verbal update in a pretty good while.
Okay.
In fact, I need to write something to all of our customers because I am starting to get emails now. So, nice. Very nice.
Very nice. Is that an original press?
No.
That looks like a Friday music press.
Okay.
You are correct, sir.
That's right. Anyway, for those that don't know and maybe watching, me for the first time on Mike's podcast here is, I have a small boutique record label with my good friend Joe Lalich, who is a co-host on my Kiss My Collectibles podcast. And
also he worked on Vince Neil's book with him. Not Vince Neil, Nikki Sixx's book. So you guys, I know you're saying it's a small thing, but you guys are players in the industry.
Yeah, that's right. Joe did just design Nikki Sixx's his latest biography, the first 21, and he also designed the jacket for 6 a.m. Greatest Hits. That's
coming. Oh, nice.
So
very nice.
So he has a very good working relationship with Nikki, and hopefully that will flourish into other things for Joe. And it all started because of a little podcast called Kiss My Collectibles, and the fact that John Five liked us, and John Five's best friends with Nikki, and it just kind of worked out that way. So
that's awesome.
Anyway, long before all that stuff, even before Joe was on the podcast, we decided to start a little boutique record label called Kiss My Wax Records, which is based off of the old name of our podcast and one of my Facebook groups. And I reached out and started licensing records that I thought should see, or that I was a fan of, that I wanted to see releases for on vinyl that had never been released on vinyl ever before. And one of the catalogs I got a hold of was the BMG catalog for Slaughter, which is about 4 records, 3 studio albums. And so basically what Joe and I are doing, working directly with Mark and Dana, is we are doing these comprehensive box sets for all of the records. And so we have Fear No Evil and Revolution and Back to Reality, which were the 3 records on CMC International and BMG. And I also have the Wildlife from Universal licensed as well. And we're working on Stick It To Ya. That's currently under contract to Friday Music, who just released some colored vinyl. But what we're doing is very different than what Friday Music is doing. So hopefully down the line, maybe last, we'll get to the big one.
Right.
So what we
Should I have not shown that product then?
No, not at all. No problem. And it's so funny you asked me about this, Mike, and we're recording this today because I just got something in that I can show.
Yeah.
So not to belabor the point too much, but Joe and I designed a nice box set, working with Mark and Dana and Bloss on, getting these things signed, really restoring the jackets, doing a 2 LP, 45 RPM, remastered for vinyl, deluxe editions, and the box sets are going to have, each one of them is going to have a bonus record in them. It's going to have all these unreleased tracks on them. It's going to have, I think this one has a 62-page book or something like that, and other little goodies and things like that. Well, we put the thing on pre-sale in late March. And, with the idea that at the time, the vinyl pressing backlog was 4 to 6 months. So we were like, great, we'll put this thing on pre-sale and we will get it in your hands by September, October, or something like that. Well, we had run into a few hiccups. Took a little bit longer to get all of the bonus audio from Dana and Mark. Not from Mark, but from Dana, for various reasons. They're touring very heavily in the summer, and it's just difficult to go through archives and things like that. We got it all mastered and all that, and by the time we turned the record in a couple months later, we're now told that the pressing backlog is 7 to 12 months. Okay. And on top of that, there is a worldwide global shipping crisis going on right now. So the update with the record is we have the jackets for the bonus record are done, and I have them in hand and actually posted them on our socials. Today, the jackets for the regular record, the gatefold jackets, were supposed to have shipped from Canada to our pressing plant. And right now I'm waiting for test pressings, which I expect within the next week or two. Nice. And then from there, once we approve the test pressings, it goes into pressing, and we'll take 550 of them and get them signed by Mark, Dana, and Bloss. And then we'll have that portion of it done. Everything else is getting printed in China. And that, which includes the book, the box, the shipping box, photos, all of that stuff, all the extras. So we had these, I just got this in today. It's kind of test stuff. These are the boxes that we had designed to ship the box sets in. Okay. And, that we're paying, I don't know, $1.50 a piece for, or something like that. But they're designed so they have, nice edging and stuff. Yeah. And this is a mock-up box for the box set. This is not what the final will look like, but this was just to show us the depth, because there will be treatment to all of this. There will be foil and all that kind of stuff, but all the boxes will be designed like this. So you have an album cover set in like this. This is all matte. They'll all be numbered, hand numbered on the back. Yep. It's got the spine. And
well, I'll say this, Jason, right? So, and I think I've told you this before, I am so burnt out on new vinyl in the sense, and I've told you this before, Ace Frehley ruined it for me, right? And I know so many Kiss fans love it, whatever, but it burned me out. I don't even have
I guess we know who's never coming on your show.
But I will say this. I think in the best 10 years, the best vinyl that has been put out, and I've said this to you before, Jason, your Space Invader, all right? And I sincerely mean it, okay? That box is incredible.
Well, thank you, Mike.
Flex vinyl knows there's problems in the industry right now. You have a track record. And if this box is even anything remotely close to that Space Invader box, it'll be worth the wait.
Thank you. Well, the jacket is going to have spot foil where the kind of the metallic kind of logo parts and the album title are going to be. We've really done it up nice. This is just a mock-up of the book. The book will actually be a little more harder, more firm than this, but that's the front page of the book, and this, this isn't even the final stuff, but there's
nice.
all kinds of stuff in here. The lyrics will be in here. There's all kinds of unreleased photos and outtakes and all of that jazz, and we'll get a mock-up backstage pass, and just some cool stuff. But the biggest thing will be the audio. The audio will be pretty cool. It's pretty sweet. And so all of that to say, it's all in progress. Everybody has been paid. We are just waiting. And it probably won't land in people's hands until after the first of the year. I don't know how we're going to, on the next one, I don't know how we're going to make that timeline shorter with the state of the industry and pressing vinyl, but we're going to try to figure out something. It's very, very difficult. This industry is right now.
I think people are just going to have to understand, is the way I see it, Jason. Like I said, you have a track record. You're very visible online. Everybody knows who you are. People know you're not ripping people off, right?
Sure.
So,
sure.
And there's the deluxe version, and then there's the standard version as well, right? So, and
that's right.
Just so that if anybody's watching this and didn't know for the first time, and then we'll talk about what we're here to talk about. So this, I'll say this album came out in 1985, right?
That's correct.
Right in our timeline of what we're going to be talking about today a little bit. So, just
that's true.
Within a few years of the album, we'll talk about, right? But where can people find the album if they want to go order it?
Oh yeah, I guess I should tell you that.
I think so.
The box set is sold out.
Yeah, I got one.
But that's right. Mike bought one, and I appreciate it because I know he's not buying a lot of vinyl right now.
That's
right.
I
really appreciate that. I think you bought the last copy, didn't you?
I had the second to last one.
The second to last copy.
That's
right. And now I know what I'm getting for Christmas. Thanks, Mike.
That's right.
But there are still standard versions available, which will be colored vinyl, because the vinyl that's coming in the box set is black vinyl. So the vinyl, if you buy just Fear No Evil by itself, the 2 LP 45 RPM, it's colored vinyl. Yep. And those are available at kissmywaxrecords.com. So awesome. You can still buy them today.
Awesome. Cool. Sounds exciting. I'm
sorry that took so long.
No, I'm glad. I wanted to give you a chance to plug that. The last time you were on was the end of June, and we were talking about it with Mark. So I'm curious. I know other people are curious as well. So thank you for that update.
You're welcome.
And they should watch maybe put the link from the last time when you had Mark on.
Absolutely.
Down in the comments.
I'll put that link below. People can watch it. Mark was on, spoke about the project with Jason and I. So good idea, Vin. I'll make sure I put that down below. Now, Vin, I guess on your side, maybe not as tough, right? What? Because you're not trying to create vinyl right now. Or
I'm not Mark Slaughter.
And you're not Mark Slaughter. That's right. But it was actually, I think last week was a year ago, you put out your album Before the Storm, which was a great album. You had Joel Hoekstra on it, Eric Levy on it, Matt Starr was on it. You had songs that were like influence, I'll say like an Elton John type of thing, but you're working on a new album as well, right? So you want to give us an update on that?
So between the months of February and May, I wrote and recorded 16 new songs with my band Wicked Revival. It's actually a cover band, but during the pandemic, we had nothing else to do but write songs. And so I worked with the singer on that, and we wrote and recorded 16 new songs. They go from the hardest kind of grungy kind of thing to a dance tune. It's just like we're an 80s cover band, or we say 80s and more. So the songs were written in that kind of tradition. So you got your hair metal stuff, you got your Eddie Money type of song, you got, so it's kind of something for everyone. And the sounds that we use for the record are true to the 80s, meaning synthesizers if they were used, guitars, presets for amplifiers. So it's really cool, and I think it's a little something for everyone. And so I think, because I'll get in trouble for this, at the end of October, I'm going to start releasing a song a month like most artists do now. and start plugging it, and then we'll probably have one song as a featured video like we did the last time, well, like I did. And so that'll happen over the winter time. So this will be, it's 16 songs. However, we'll probably break it up into 2 records.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
extend the
So
life
I'm
of
going to
this
put
thing.
no pressure on you, but we're recording today is what, October 25th?
Oh boy,
That's the end of October, Vin.
Joe is gonna love you for
It's
that
the
one. Yes.
26th. It's the
It's the
26th.
26th.
I know. So I have a few days to get this worked out. Yeah, the first one will probably be just like typical lyric video type of thing. I did one in I think May for the first song we put out, but I like to put this under my Vincent LaRussa Music umbrella site that I have, and yeah, so we'll just see what happens.
And where will people be able to find those songs?
I mean, the usual Spotify, Apple Music. We'll have it on all the outlets. Initially, before all that stuff goes out, it'll be through Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that, the social media, Twitter stuff. But I'm working on getting it all to a full release via TuneCore and all that. You remember how that went last year. So
absolutely.
I'll have some more experience with that this year, and hopefully it'll be a little bit smoother. But yeah, looking forward to it. And then I'll go to Jason when I need a deluxe edition, and all that.
We'll
other
put it
stuff.
out. We'll put it out 12 months later. So.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So, well, hopefully by the time I post this, Vin, which will be early November, hopefully that song will be out and people will be enjoying it.
Yeah, I could tell you what the name of the song is now. It's "Girl" by Wicked Revival.
What is it, Girl?
"Girl" by Wicked Revival.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, everybody take a look for that.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So what brought us together today, like I said at the start before, I made a post, as I do every day. I make posts on my Facebook page, The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn, talk about all different things, 70s, 80s, 90s rock for the most part. And I made a post when it was the 30th anniversary of the Nirvana album, Nevermind, coming out. And I said on there, and I know Nirvana is one of these bands that people love or hate. And I know it, and I totally get it. I totally understand why people feel the way they do. But I made a comment on there that said, it kind of gets under my skin a little bit when people say Nirvana is overrated, right? I don't mind when people say they hate them or whatever, but in my mind, you can't say they're overrated. And Jason, I actually think of you when I say that, because it's almost like I get stuck on that word. I guess the way Kiss collectors get stuck on counterfeit versus bootleg, I get stuck on overrated versus I hate. To me, those are two very different things. You could hate, So in my mind, that's the way I feel about the word overrated. So I made that comment, and you commented right back, and I'm paraphrasing. This is not what you said. I don't like Nirvana. I think they're overrated. We need to do a podcast. And I was like, yes, we do. Yes, we do. So that's what brought us together here today. But I thought of this before we speak about the album. Why don't we just for a moment put our minds back in 1991, 92, 1990? I'm curious, Jason, and you're a couple years younger than myself and Vincent. So I would have thought actually you would like the prime candidate to like Nirvana. But what were you listening to in 1990, 91, 92? What music? Obviously, I'm going to guess Slaughter, obviously.
Sure. Well, see, that's where my perspective is, because I was the prime candidate.
Yes.
My age group, it came out, and that whole movement happened while I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to watch an entire student body change overnight, and it was perplexing.
Keep
to
that
me.
comment in mind when I talk
That's
about
right.
overrated.
it was perplexing to me,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll get into why all of that is. What I thought then, what I think now, and how I've come to that conclusion. But it was very perplexing to me. And but to answer your question without belaboring that point, I was listening to what 90% of the country was listening to at the time, as far as rock and roll goes. I was listening to Motley Crue, Poison, Skid Row, Warrant, Slaughter, all of those bands.
Basically just named my record collection back then.
That's right. They were at the top of the charts.
Yeah.
Everybody I knew that was a rock fan was influenced by those bands musically. Everybody I knew, every long-haired guy, you can look in my annual. It's bizarre to look in my annual and look at the pictures from 91 and 90 and all the guys with long hair, what t-shirts they were wearing, And then in 92 and 93 and 94, which is when I graduated, what t-shirts they were wearing.
Sure.
It was bizarre. I was wearing an Ozzy Osbourne No More Tears t-shirt, you know, and in 1991 in my annual,
Yeah.
you know, and I was wearing a Def Leppard Hysteria shirt in my 7th grade picture, and, you know, and on. I was wearing a Flesh and Blood shirt in my 8th grade picture, you know. So that was
out of curiosity at that time. Were you into Metallica or Anthrax?
Sure.
So you were into those bands as well.
I
Right?
loved, you know, and that was, you know, that's a whole other podcast to talk about, because, you know, it was like you could be of course the term hair band didn't exist then, but you could be, you know, a pop metal glam, you could be a glam metal fan and still love Metallica and Megadeth and that whole genre of music, you know, the speed metal and all that stuff. But it didn't flow the other way for the most part, you know.
True. Very true. Yes.
If you were listening to Slayer and early Metallica, you were not listening to Poison and Winger, you know. That's just the way it was. But I loved all of those bands, every one of them. So
awesome. Now, Vin, what about you? I mean, you and I grew up together. I obviously know a lot of music you were interested in, but for those watching who maybe don't know or remember some of your background, what were you listening to 1990, 91, 92, that time period?
I mean, it was very similar. I remember, I think, was it Heartbreak Station was Cinderella's third album?
That
came out around then? Was that 90 or 91?
It was 90.
Yeah.
90, yeah. So I was still holding on for dear life, but I kind of felt like something was about to happen, because the one thing I did notice at the time, and because I was buying those records, I continued to buy all those groups that Jason just mentioned, and I had all those records. But I just felt like it was starting to become stale, in my opinion. You know, like I felt like I was hearing a lot of the same thing over and over again. However, I'm not going to get to the point yet when the Nirvanas came around, how I felt, unless you want to know that now.
Not yet. No, let's hold it.
Yeah,
hold it for 2 more minutes.
I was listening to all the same stuff. However, also what I was doing at that time was digging deep back into like the Beatles and stuff like that, because that's when I started doing a lot of writing and recording. And I was studying albums like Abbey Road and Sgt. Pepper, because I didn't really have those records as a kid. I mean, I knew the songs, but I didn't know the albums as complete albums. And there's certainly an experience, and I know Jason can appreciate this, and you see you can't really see all the vinyl that's surrounding me, but you know, Mike, it's all over my house.
Like 3,000-4,000 vinyl, right?
It's about
not vinyls with an S.
Vinyl, yeah.
Records.
Hey, even better, records.
But there's a certain experience of, you know, flipping over, you know, side A and you know, and setting the order to records. You know, when CDs came out, they had to think about it, but it was a continuous stream.
That's
you
right.
know, but there was an art form to vinyl, and even cassettes, same thing. So yeah, I was still, you know, listening to all the same groups with some more classic rock.
So in 1990, how old were you two?
I was 20.
20.
Okay.
Yep. Right.
So I would have been 13, you know.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
So 13.
I didn't realize you that
big difference.
Yeah.
I'll be 46 in December.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. So you were 6.
So that is the time period.
Right. And I'll say this, my musical influences of things I was listening to back then was exactly like you guys. And I'll just add 2 other things into the mix. Actually, as much as I listened to the Kiss and the Poisons and the Warrants and Iron Maiden I had, and a couple of Metallica albums I had, although I wasn't huge on Metallica, but I had all those records. I also at the time listened to bands like Madonna, Prince.
Sure.
Okay.
Me too.
I was into that pop stuff. I loved it.
I thought you were going to go to Sex Pistols.
And then I was going to say, that's the second thing. Thing. And then I was also in like 1986 or so, before it became a very cliche thing for all rock bands to say they like the Sex Pistols. I met this girl I worked with. Her name was Patty. And she's like, I like this punk rock band. I remember thinking, what's punk rock? And she's like, I'll give you a tape. You got to listen to it. And she gave me a tape, and the first song was the Sex Pistols song "Holidays in the Sun," and starts with guitar and the drums. I'm like, all right, you know, this sounds like a rock song to me. And then Johnny Rotten's vocal came in, and instantly it just hit me. I'm like, wow, that's freaking cool. I like that. And then you hated it. You couldn't understand what I liked about it.
Many a night of torture in his room.
Same here. And you know, that kind of plays into this Nirvana thing and how I felt about it, because, you know, I'm sure we'll get there, but it's, you know, it's not just I'm pissed off because they destroyed the music that I love as far as mainstream. They, it's just I don't know.
Are you about to get emotional?
I can't bring the words. I don't want to be insulting. I don't want to say, oh, Nirvana sucks, because I've always, people used to say that all the time, and because I used to manage record stores and stuff, and people would come in and whatever was playing, all those guys suck, and I'm like, no, they don't suck. You just don't like them.
Bingo. Right? So that I have no problem with it. Exactly.
Right. And I don't want to say Nirvana sucks. I just want, but when you come from liking guitar players like George Lynch and Warren D. Martini and all of these prolific players and all of these prolific drummers, and then you and all of these vocalists like David Coverdale and Paul Stanley and all of these guys that were just, master crafts. And then you hear something like the Sex Pistols that is the antithesis to that. You either are bowled over like you were, or you're like, what the fuck is that, man? I could make that noise myself. And, if I didn't play, if I wasn't a player, I could make that noise myself, and
I think that was some of the appeal to me with the Sex Pistols. I was gee, if I practice just for another week, I might be able to play that.
Right. And I think there's something to that with with the Nirvana appeal as well, because I was out there as a drummer trying to learn how to play like, Tommy Lee and Randy Castillo and all of these, Tommy Aldridge and all these drummers that were just fucking at the top of their game.
Sure.
And not that Dave Grohl isn't a great drummer, because history has shown that he is a great drummer, but I just felt like Kurt wasn't really all of that much of a player and a vocalist.
So, and I totally get that. And I'll say this, one of the things with all the music I listened to, whether it was the hair bands, air quotes, right? Whether it was like, and I wasn't huge on a band like Megadeth, but I love that song In My Darkest Hour. It had such a great hook to me. Whether some of the Madonna stuff, the Prince stuff, the Sex Pistols stuff, but the songs I gravitated towards were songs that had what I call a hook to them, right? Sure. You didn't have to be the greatest vocalist. You didn't have to have the greatest guitar solo. If the song had a hook, I was hooked. And that's why I liked all the different types of music. So I remember vividly where I was the first time I heard Nirvana, and it was Smells Like Teen Spirit, which is very cliche, but I remember I was driving in my car, I was going to get gas, I was going to see my now wife, but at the time girlfriend, and it came on the radio, and the verse part was playing, and I'm like, who is this? This does not sound anything like Warrant or any of those other bands, of Poison or anything else that was on the radio at the time. And I'm like, this is going to be embarrassing. During the verses, I'm like, could that be you too? Who's singing? What voice? And then the chorus came in. I was like, well, that sure as hell ain't you too. Who is this? What is this? But the hook got me instantly, to the point that I remember where I was. Again, liking Sex Pistols, liking the Ramones, liking punk rock music. That style, I had no problem with it because I heard the hook instantly. So I wasn't as turned off as maybe you were, let's just say, because where's that George Lynch guitar solo? But do you guys remember where you were the first time you heard Nirvana by any chance?
Absolutely not. actually, you know what? Very good chance that it was from my brother. But I will say this, my brother was on board with that stuff, and he probably played it, and I heard it, in the house, or something like that. But he had those records. And just a quick fast forward, it took me like 3 or 4 years to really get attached. I think it was until like 94, 95 that I got on board, because I really kind of resented it also, that they destroyed my music, but in hindsight, they didn't, the record companies did, because it's the record company's choice, so people like to blame Nirvana, this was a record company choice, they were making
that is right.
They were making enough money on the other bands. It didn't have to be done, but so I don't remember. But Jason, I don't know if you remember.
I don't remember, but I want to speak to that directly, because that is an excellent point. Because one of the things that I've learned years later, I feel like that Nirvana and the whole movement but specifically Nirvana, was a bandwagon situation that everybody jumped on, and it was because they had no choice. And here's the reason why I know a lot of that to be fact. I used to work at a record store, and I had a manager who had been, she was probably 10 years older than me, and she had been, managing record stores going all the way back to the early 80s. And she said, so she went through the whole 80s metal movement in record stores, and the boom of the CD and all of that stuff. And she said to me, she worked for Sam Goody, so they had like a corporate conference call in 1991 or whenever it was, and they said that like the president of Sam Goody told them, all these managers and stuff, that they had just spoken with the president of Geffen Records and the president of MTV, and they were no longer going to be pushing any of these styles of bands. And they went through the number of bands that that what we just talked about. They were not going to no longer play them on MTV, and the labels were no longer going to be pushing them as far as budgets for videos and anything like that. And this is going to be the new band that we're going to be pushing, and we're going to send promos out of all of this, and we need you to play this in your stores, and we need you to push this. It was a concerted effort. I don't care what anybody says. I know this for a fact. It was a concerted record label and MTV effort to push this band to the front. And I think Kurt despised it.
Agreed.
And I think it had a lot to do because he didn't want to be Mr. Commercial.
Yeah.
And if you listen to the two records prior to Nevermind, it's a very different band.
Very different band.
And I don't think he ever wanted to be in that kind of situation. The band sounded completely different on that record. Agreed. They got a completely different producer in there that pushed them and took them into a different commercial direction, the new commercial direction. And I think that it was fed to everybody. And I feel like, sure, there are a lot of people that love it, but I also think that there are a lot of people that just jumped on the bandwagon as well. Because what I was talking about earlier was I was in my school as a sophomore in high school, and I watched all of these guys that had just went to see Poison with me the year before laugh at me in 1991 because I listened to Poison.
Right.
And it didn't make any sense to me. I didn't understand that.
Right.
All of those people, I mean, it was 99% of them.
Yep.
All of those people said, what the fuck are you listening to those bands for? They're pussies. They play pussy music, Hairband didn't exist. It was hurtful, Yeah. I had people make, it was Kiss all over again in grade school.
Yes.
I had
Good
people
point.
make fun of me for wearing Poison shirts and Def Leppard shirts and Motley Crue shirts, and they were like, it's Nirvana, man, and MTV comes out, doesn't play any new videos from any of those bands. They have Beavis and Butthead making fun of the Stewarts wearing a Winger shirt. Yes. It was a concerted effort to change the landscape of music. It was not organically grown. If that was the case, the first two Nirvana records should have been huge.
Now, wasn't there
the first Soundgarden?
There was only one, I think, before.
There's an EP. Isn't there an EP before that? Well, I mean,
I know that there's Bleach.
There's
Bleach is an album, right? I don't know.
Is there EP? Is there not? Well, okay. Well, no. Forgive my Nirvana ignorance, but but there was a Soundgarden record out before that.
Yes. I'm going to say this, and then Vin, I'll let you say something. My introduction to that Seattle scene was actually going to see Van Halen on the For Unlawful Knowledge tour, and Alice in Chains opened up.
Sure.
And I didn't have a clue who Alice in Chains was. I'm going to be honest, right?
That's right.
I don't think, what was their song? Man in the Box was their first single hit.
Right.
I don't think that song was a hit yet. I bootlegged the show and I recorded Alice in Chains just because I always recorded every opening act. And to this day, I don't know if I listened to it. They had zero impact on me, Alice in Chains. Zero.
Soundgarden opened for Skid Row on the Slave to the Grind tour.
That's right. 92. 92. What were you going to say, Vin? I cut you off there.
Well, a couple of things. A lot of those bands, their previous records sounded nothing like the grunge era. First of all, so it wasn't like just So yeah, obviously there was something that put it together in that way that they were writing songs, and I'll get to that technical aspect of what I think of that. But what happened wasn't unprecedented, in my opinion. In the early '80s, when MTV started and Quiet Riot broke with, Come On Feel the Noise, and then Def Leppard's. And we know the stories that, A&R guys were going down Sunset Strip signing bands like, the evil of the record business has always been there of every decade, So, in one ways, and I'm not going against you, Jason, at all, so don't take it this way.
No, that's totally cool, man.
But we totally benefited from that record company, whatever you want to call it, in the early '80s, and we had however 7 or 8 good years, of them really kind of pushing that industry. I mean, I remember being shocked when Great White had a hit with Once Bitten, Twice Shy.
Sure.
I always loved Great White, and I was like,
for a few
I hope
years
they could
before
hit someday.
that. Right.
Yeah. And when they got that, I was like, wow, holy crap! Even though it was a cover, but that just goes to show you that they were pushing even the lower level bands. No disrespect to a Great White, but they weren't a Bon Jovi, they weren't a Motley Crue as far as what they had achieved status wise.
Sure.
So.
Can I respond directly to that?
Absolutely. For free.
That's right.
For free.
I agree with you. And those cyclical kind of things happen, and they're, in my opinion, for the most part, they're never natural. The industry pushes it. It actually may be even more natural now because it grows out of, YouTube. A lot of times a movement will, where it's not controlled so much, but you're exactly right.
Well,
what happened in the early '80s with metal and hard rock was absolutely contrived, and the story you're telling is true. The difference for me is it was promoting rock bands against a soft rock and disco. So we weren't killing other rock bands. This movement killed other rock bands, and it was offensive to me,
Yeah. So, it was offensive to me too. Like I said, I wasn't on board. I resented it. I didn't buy those records in the first 2 or 3 years, any of them.
Sure.
But the one thing I will say about where the industry, and a lot of it's electronics, where its influences music, and I think I've talked to Mike about this, in the the 70s with the synthesizer and the 80s with the drum machine, purely those sounds influence a generation of music, whether you want to call it new wave, whether you want to talk that, maybe people don't know it, that, Pyromania is all a drum machine. There's no real drums on that record,
They don't.
Yeah, and that's because, what's his name? I'm doing a blank.
Mutt Lange.
Mutt Lange. That's what he wanted. And then I've read, all these other producers were like, we want it to sound like Pyromania. ZZ Top's record, Eliminator, drum machine. That is not a real drummer playing on. And they had big hits with that kind of synthesized thing. So you saw a movement, even coming from the metal or hard rock, even to blues, what ZZ Top was, blues pop,
Right.
And all the videos that went around to see all that stuff that was going on at the time.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Jason, you said something before though, which I think for myself is interesting. How your friends went from wearing Poison shirts or going to a Poison concert and then instantly became Nirvana fans. So, obviously I'm on the side of when I bought the Nevermind album. I loved it. To this day, I think it's one of the quote unquote greatest albums of all time. But through 92, 93, 94, 95, I purchased Slaughter albums, right? I purchased Kicks albums. I purchased Dokken albums.
You and the 6,000 others.
Yes. So even though I was listening to Nirvana, I honestly did not like Pearl Jam. I did not like Soundgarden. I did not like Alice in Chains. I happen to love Stone Temple Pilots.
Wow.
Which I don't think Stone Temple Pilots is grunge personally. Their first album, yes. After that, I think they're just a straight rock band. But I found mixtapes that I have from the 90s. And on here, let me see if I can actually read these because my eyesight is Cry Tough, Top of the World, Love and Affection. I mean, this is Poison, Nelson, Van Halen. And then, of course, I've got in here Son of a Gun, Nirvana. Okay, it's a song on like their Incesticide album that came out after Nevermind. Coming of Age. Okay, so I was all over the
Damn
place.
Yankees.
Damn Yankees, exactly. And it goes on and on, right? But my point being, I listened to Nirvana. There's some Stone Temple Pilots songs on there, but I stayed with the bands I listened to. And I remember Woodstock 94. I remember saying to my now wife, how come Motley Crue isn't playing Woodstock? They're one of the biggest bands for the last decade. So even in 94, with my love of Nirvana and my love of Nevermind, I never gave up that other stuff. I didn't love the Motley Crue 94 album a whole lot, to be honest with you.
I did.
There's a couple of songs on there. What's the last song? Drift Away? It's amazing. Maybe one of my favorite Motley Crue songs. I loved Generation Swine that came after it. Loved it. Okay.
Wow.
Yes.
Sounds like another podcast.
All over the fucking place.
And that is
Sounds
my
like
point.
another
I was
podcast.
all over the place. I didn't try to go into a box and say, I'm now.
Sure.
I had the flannel shirts. I'm not going to lie. I had the flannel shirts. I never had the hair to look like I was one of those guys in the 90s. But
I did. I had long, straight hair. I wore flannel shirts, or I would take them off, and a t-shirt underneath, or I'd take it off and tie it around my waist. You know, I wore all fucking cargo shorts and all of that.
Okay.
I wore all of that stuff. And look, I want to qualify too.
Yeah.
I loved Stone Temple Pilots.
Cool.
I loved Alice in Chains.
Interesting.
I liked Soundgarden. Okay. Well, look, I think Alice in Chains is a metal band.
Okay.
You know, they, you know, to me, there's no difference between them and Saigon Kick, you know, and, you know, very, you know, vocal harmony, down tuning kind of dreary-esque kind of songs, you know. So there are a lot of bands. So I just thought, you know, Alice in Chains got swept up. They were more of a metal band than anything in my mind. And just like you said with Stone Temple Pilots, the first album is clearly grunge. The rest of it is Zeppelin-esque, you know.
Some excellent songs on those other albums.
Absolutely. And I huge Stone Temple Pilots fan, huge DeLeo Brothers fan. And I know a lot about that stuff. And there's a few Pearl Jam songs I can stomach, you know.
I hated the song Jeremy. When that video came on and Eddie Vedder was like all angry in the video. Oh, I cringe to this day if I see that video. I cannot stomach that song.
When the second Pearl Jam record came out, Versus, and they were a little bit heavier, like Go and Animal, I thought those were pretty cool songs, you know.
Okay.
But Nirvana, I just never got, man. It just never. Here's the thing. I was a teenager and I had a great childhood and I had the best of friends and I wasn't an angry kid. And that stuff didn't speak to me. It meant nothing to me. I just wanted to have a good time, and music was a good time for me. Right. You know, or it was a sad song about breaking up with a girlfriend that happened to me, but I wasn't oppressed, and I didn't want to.
Which was all the metal lyrics of the time: getting laid, sad song about losing a girlfriend.
That's right.
I mean, you know what I mean?
That's right. What it was. That's what it was. So you know, there might have been. I doubt 90% of the kids I went to school with were fucking depressed, you know, teenagers. But you know, there were probably some people that spoke to. I'm sure, but. It wasn't me. So it didn't move me.
Right.
That's the thing. You know, it didn't move me. So I didn't latch on to it at all. When I liked the stuff I liked by Alice in Chains and the stuff I liked by, you know, Stone Temple Pilots, those songs had fucking guitar solos in them, loud drums, big harmonies. And though it was different than what I was listening to, the elements were still there. That wasn't as present on a Nirvana record as it was. You know, it was more a punk record. It was a punk record, and punk didn't speak to me.
And I could totally understand that. And like you're saying, there's certainly very few, if any, guitar solos on Nevermind, right? But to me, and I mentioned this before, the hooks on the album, whether it's songs like Drain You, In Bloom, songs you might not even know, right? Lounge Act, Stay Away, right?
I know the record.
Got great hooks to me. And that's what I loved about the album, is that, it might have had that angry stuff. I didn't really care. Just like when Motley Crue was singing about treating girls certain ways, I didn't, you know, that wasn't me. I didn't relate to it, but I like the hooks of the song. Yeah, that's right.
I was there. I was a witness.
Yeah, that was me. All right. What I wouldn't have done even just have a girl talk to me at that point.
You and me both, my friend.
That's right. So,
sorry, guys. I had girlfriends all through high school. So
look, I did. I went to my prom. I went to my wife's prom, but
I didn't. I went to no proms.
But,
I got dumped by my high school girlfriend 2 years in. She was 2 years older than me, and So when she graduated high school, I was a sophomore, and she went to college and dumped me, and I was listening to "I Won't Forget You, Babe."
Oh, that's the exact
And-
song I was gonna say. I was gonna say, and then you play "I Won't Forget." I can't believe you just said that.
But that was '92. I wasn't listening to "Drain You" or "Smells Like Teen Spirit." I was listening to a song from '86, going, "I want you back.
Yeah.
I'm a loser."
So Vin, let me ask you. You said you weren't into it at first, right? And you knew my love for the Sex Pistols and that. And in 91, 92, 93, we were friends. We were hanging out, but nowhere near as much as we did in the 80s at that point. At what point?
We call those the abandonment years.
Yeah, the abandonment years. I was still bitter over you stealing my Kill 45, which is another whole conversation.
Yeah. We should do a podcast on that story.
That's right. That's So, but at what point did you said your brother played it for you, but at what point did you instantly come around when you heard it? How long did it take you once you really became aware of it?
Well, okay, so let me just say this. A lot of and I've been playing music for many years. A lot of my music friends did not, like a lot of people would say, "Oh, he sucks. He can't play guitar," And a lot of my circle was the same. People listening to the Eddie Van Halens, the George Lynches, the Warren D. Martinis, the people he's mentioned, singers or these pure singers, vocalists, blah, blah, blah. So I remember being with a coworker who was a great guitar player, and I remember him specifically saying, "Nirvana, it sucks, I don't understand why they're popular." I didn't argue with him at the time, but I just let him vent, But I think what happened was, there was a couple things. In around 94, I started playing the bass, and I started a cover band. And at the time, that was really popular, the music. So when we decided to go out and play music, I remember my good friend Rob, who was not into that music, but knew that, all right, we got to play the Pearl Jams, the Soundgardens, because this is what the people want to hear. So I started listening to the music, at that point, and learning the songs. And also at that time is when I started buying CDs, because I was a holdout, and vinyl, okay. Same. I went from vinyl to cassettes. And then when that was kind of like the vinyl was gone, I'm like, all right, well, CDs, I guess, are better than cassettes at this point. I can't get the vinyl anymore, Right. So, all right. So I remember, I think the last vinyl I had bought up until that point, I was in Tower Records, was actually Pearl Jam Vitology.
Oh, wow, really? Interesting.
Yeah, and it came out at that time, because I was like, holy shit, fucking vinyl! I don't care who it is, I'm buying it, you know what I mean? And I bought it. I remember
that was 94, right?
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, because I remember walking into a record store and buying Queensryche Promised Land, going, "Holy shit, there's vinyl here!"
Yeah. I was in Tower Records on Broadway. You remember the Tower Records we used to go to, and it was because of the CD, and all of a sudden I would go to these used CD stores, and I was able to gobble up. And you know the way I am. I become a monster when stuff used, whether it's vinyl, and I was just buying it. And my brother was like, "Oh, get this Alice in Chains, it's good," and he would play me some of the stuff in the Soundgarden. So he kind of turned me on to the stuff that I wasn't. And plus, when I was listening, there was no Sirius FM or whatever. I was listening to the radio. This is what they were playing. So you started hearing it more on the radio, and so it was all those factors. And quite honestly, I thought, wow, this is really good, and I held out. What took me so long? I did remember saying that. And also, I just want to say that being a musician and learning those songs and knowing the hair metal blueprint, as I got to know it very well, the chord changes, the lyrics, you knew what the next line was going to come out when the next record come out. And that's, say, nothing against me loving those records. Let's be quite honest, But what I did notice was, wait a second, this chord change doesn't sound familiar. Like, what are they doing? If anybody who's seen a guitar, you see the dots on the guitar, and normally people play on the dots or whatever when they're playing chords, if you look at a lot of stuff. Now all of a sudden, like, Nirvana was going in between those spots, and the chord changes. Like, there's this guy, Rick Beato, whatever his name is.
I know Rick Beato very well.
No. So he does, I think he did, like, what makes this song great, maybe on Smells Like Teen Spirit. And he was just saying, like, this chord change, this chord progression.
By the way, that chord progression, isn't it like More Than a Feeling? Isn't it in the chorus?
No, because More Than a Feeling is all major chords.
Yeah.
Nirvana is all, minor chords. Are all. That's what makes it. That's what gives it its signature depressiveness.
Yeah. Okay. And the fact that, and let's face it, they, bands were using drop D tuning, and that's why you listen to Carnival of Souls. Gee, was that an accident? No, they knew that, like, we got to sound like this. How do we do that? Oh, what tuning are they using?
Not only that, they went out and got fucking Alice in Chains producer to produce the record. Totally right, you know.
And you know me, Mike, I've always liked that record, you know, because it wasn't like the typical Kiss record.
I'm curious, Jason, just really quick, do you like Carnival of Souls?
Massive fan, huge fan.
Yeah, there you go.
So
one of my favorite records in the catalog.
So sorry, and I'm the only one of the three of us that really.
And let me tell you, all of the grunge records that all the hair bands did, massive fan. You know, Doc and Shadow Life, Warrant, Belly to Belly, and Ultraphobic. All of those records. I fucking love all of those records because they took that sound, but still was melodic on top of it. You couldn't take the glam metal out of those bands, even though they were playing down-tuned and playing minor chords and things like that, you know. But anyway, go ahead, Vince.
And it's a shame because those records really never got a fair chance because of the bands. And you're right; those are some great records. I know Mike was. I remember him telling me at the time. I think it was the Warrant. What Warrant record was it? The third record? It was
Ultraphobic or Ultraphobic. Either one of them. They're two great albums.
Fucking
incredible.
I
remember even at the time you loving those records.
Yes.
And at that point, I hadn't really. I think too. I remember around 91, 92, I started listening to Chili Peppers, like when Blood Sugar Sex Magic. I fell in love with that record, and that took me into a whole other thing because that was like a different genre for me, you know.
Funk
and I was
metal.
listening to funk metal.
Rock,
so I was listening. So I was listening to all those bands too, you know. But I remember you telling me at the time, I was like, "Really? It's good." Warrant record, you're like, "You're still listening to them?" I was like, it was like 93, whatever, 94. I definitely was off at that point, you know. But
no, Jason was talking. Go ahead, Jason.
I was going to say, consequently, my record label has licensed Belly to Belly and Ultraphobic to release on vinyl.
Oh, very cool.
Nice.
Very cool. That'll be exciting. And I was going to say, kind of going back to your label there for a moment in the Fear No Evil, the Slaughter song Searching at that time. I love that song.
So great.
Absolutely love that song. There's a couple of other songs on that album I love as well. But so I was into that hair metal stuff still in the 90s. Sure. Go ahead,
I got because you like those records, and I still to this day don't understand why you don't like Carnival of Souls. I just, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. What was the word I used before then? Hook. When I hear a song like Rain, let's just say on Carnival, where's the hook? There is no hook.
The chorus.
There's no hook there.
The riff.
That sounds like
this is a fight. This is a fight.
For being angry.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think I'm on Vincent's side here.
That's okay.
You're totally wrong, my friend, on this one.
Yeah. The riff. That is the hook.
Yeah, it's like somebody's about to fuck me up. You know what I mean? Come on. What are you talking about?
I don't connect with it. I guess the same way Jason said he doesn't connect with Nirvana. I don't connect with it.
Yeah.
I didn't look at it as fake. Like everyone was like, "Oh, Paul Stanley's singing about that." You know what? I heard Paul Stanley sing enough about getting laid. At this point, let me hear him sing about some shit that's maybe not so happy, you know?
That's right.
And sing in a style, you know, that's different, you know? Do you want
to... what you want me. Oh, please stop it.
So would you have that?
It doesn't sound quite like that.
Yeah, no, that was a terrible rendition. I want to say that, or I want to talk like I talk. I mean, you know, you want them to really go up that high, like what? You know, what do you prefer?
That's a good question. Which one do I like less? That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, both of those, by the way, were bad impersonations of those two songs. I apologize to those, you know. So I happen to love it. And I love the Crazy Nights record. Let me just wave my hand.
I do too.
I love that record.
I do too, just not that song. But yeah, so look, obviously we're all in different point of views with this. So I openly say love Nevermind. Love it. I put it in like quote unquote top 20 albums of all time. Saying that, Bleach I think is good, not great. In Utero I think is average at best. So it's not like I'm sitting here as like this great big Nirvana fan, but to me, the Nevermind album, the hooks and all of that. So I say fan. I want to talk about rated versus overrated in a moment, right? And go back to Jason, what you were saying about the kids in school and all of that, but just fan. Obviously, Jason, clearly not a fan, right?
Well, you know, I mean, there's a couple of songs on the record that I don't mind.
Okay.
And I certainly hear the hooks. I know the hooks in Bloom and Smells Like Teen Spirit. And I've listened to those and occasionally, you know, sing along with a couple of those songs. It just, the accolades that it is given, because I don't think the accolades are all necessarily 100% real. I think a lot of that stuff was manufactured,
So let's talk about that.
hold on, let me finish that one thought.
Yeah, I got a thought
the,
on that manufactured word too, but go ahead. Yeah, finish, Jason. And I know you do too, Mike.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
the follow-up in Euro, if you look back, if the guy hadn't killed himself, okay, and you look at where in Euro was trending at the time, it was actually going to be a commercial failure.
Yep, agreed.
An absolutely commercial failure.
Agreed.
Nirvana could have very easily ended up being a one-album hit wonder band, and maybe almost forgotten. For
now that wasn't purposely done by Nirvana. They wanted to make an album, a follow-up that sounded nothing like it was polished like Nevermind, a little bit more like Bleach was. But that they did that very intentionally. In fact, their third single, I think third, maybe fourth single, was going to be a song, Penny Royalty, which was a little bit more, I don't want to say popish, but it was a little closer to Nevermind. That was going to be the third or fourth single, and then it ended up not coming out because Kurt Cobain killed himself.
That's right.
So I wonder what that would have had, if any, impact on the album. But I agree that the album sounds much different than Nevermind does.
I mean, and it would be interesting to see I guess I don't mean to be morbid, but how much did him killing himself catapult that band and him into a stratosphere that who knows would have existed like it does today without him killing himself?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. But the one thing I will say is that
let me cut you 10 seconds, Ben. Just answer one quick question: fan or not a fan of Nirvana? Right? Because I wanted to ask you that before. Fan or not a fan?
Who are we asking?
You.
Oh yeah, no, I'm
Pay attention. Come on.
All right.
All right, so you are a fan. Now continue. I just wanted to kind of, because we're obviously giving pros and cons. So you are a fan. So now continue what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say one of the things, and if you go back and you watch the MTV Unplugged, and you just watch
second favorite MTV Unplugged album.
Yeah, I mean that's a reason why that's such a tremendous performance is now you really know, obviously, the pain that this guy was going through, how real that was. That was different, and I'm not going to put down the hair metal bands where they're doing all the stage things. I mean, that was just part of the shtick that they were doing, and it was very appealing. Don't get me wrong, I wanted to do that shit. But this guy was, this guy was obviously, whether it was written his lyrics or whatever, or how he played, or his style, or, the anger he had, and smashing his guitar. I know, Pete Townsend did, Jimi Hendrix to put his, but that wasn't.
I think Paul Stanley's done it once or twice.
Yeah, he's done it a couple times. But,
no? Jason's saying no, we're wrong. Sorry.
Never once.
Never.
But
you imagined it.
Okay.
But what I do think, because those MTV Unplugged shows really started to get their popularity, some of those, and including the Nirvana one, some of those grunge bands, like the Alice in Chains one is awesome. The sound, all of the Stone Temple Pilots is one of my favorites. I mean, I have those on vinyl, whatever's available, So yes, I do think they were on a decline. However, what was the single that came off of that MTV? It was the Man Who Sold the World, whatever, the Bowie song.
That's
Man Who Sold the World.
Yeah, Man Who Sold the World. Did they release All Apologies also? They might have from that.
All Apologies was released as well. They did.
Yeah,
it was a huge single.
But yes, but it was a really, now was that just, I don't remember timeline, before or after his death?
After. The album came out after his death, yeah.
Okay. The album came out after, and the broadcast came out after his death?
I don't know.
That's I don't remember.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
It's tough. So it's tough to judge. It's all tainted by the fact that he killed himself.
Yeah.
And we don't know. We'll never know. Right. Does it sustain? Does it stratospherically explode into the sky?
I'll give another comparison. John Lennon, a Beatle, right?
Right.
When he came out with Double Fantasy, I could bet whatever that album wouldn't have been as big, as popular as. Now, it had some great songs on it. There were hits on there. But the fact that the man died, and he was a Beatle, and that's big, that really catapulted that record. That happens. Jason, when David Bowie dies, Prince dies, all of a sudden you go to records, they go up in price, they're used records, you can't find them. everybody starts reissuing the records. You know,
but the difference is all of those guys you just named have a massive history.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Kurt had one record, two if you count In Utero, as far as mainstream popularity. Yep. Does he attain a John Lennon status that he has now had he not killed himself? Maybe he does.
Right, we'll never know.
Maybe he does. We'll never know.
Right.
But I just have to wonder when you put those things, when you start to see, In Utero, a massive fall off in sales from, it doesn't matter if they did it purposely or not.
Right.
A large portion of this fan base that bought Nevermind did not buy In Utero because they didn't like it, and who's to say this guy is on a John Lennon, Bob Dylan level, historically, if he didn't kill himself. Maybe they just petered out and went back to Seattle and went back to the clubs like he probably wanted to stay in the first place.
Agreed.
Agreed. We just don't know.
No, so. Well, and we'll never know. So, but I'll say this, Jason. I agree.
I got the dates, by the way, for this stuff. So
okay,
cool.
So,
so before I say what I was going to say, yeah. So was it broadcast before or after his death?
It was broadcast in December of '93.
So that was before his death. His death was April of '94.
Yeah. And the album came out in November 1st, '94. So the album came out, but the broadcast
right. So obviously everybody was like buying the first Nirvana thing that comes out after his death,
Yeah.
So it's impossible to discern.
Yeah. Of course. But Jason, so I'll say this. I could agree with everything people are saying, you and Vince saying about Kurt Cobain himself as a person and the pedestal he's held on, right? Because perhaps if there was 25 more years behind that, he wouldn't be thought of the way he is. But going back to the album, Nevermind, why I say never could I say that the album is overrated, not the band, the album, right? Because of everything you said half hour, 45 minutes ago, whatever it was, where overnight people went from listening to Poison and those bands to wearing their flannel shirts, and manufactured or not, right? And I'm not debating it was manufactured.
Sure.
But Nirvana led that charge. And I think the song Jeremy actually came first, but Nirvana certainly was the one that everybody thought of and remembered back then. I have a hard time saying that is overrated. Hate it? Fine. Don't want to listen to it? Fine. I have no problem. I get stuck when people say it's overrated because it changed music, dare I say forever, because after grunge went away, what friggin' rock bands have been around since then? Pretty much none, right? So in some ways, Nirvana, that album changed music forever.
I agree with you. It did change music forever. Here's the thing. Had Nirvana not existed and that album not came out, and Pearl Jam did, and the labels did the same thing, but insert Pearl Jam 10 instead, that would have been the record that we would have been talking about as the greatest grunge record of all time.
Perhaps. However, couldn't we say that about whether it's 1984 or Shout at the Devil, right? You could say that.
Sure.
Like Vince said, the music labels in the industry always push what they want to push, right? Whether it was the hair metal, the grunge. You might be right, but the reality is Nirvana, Nevermind is the one that was pushed and did sell 30 million copies and did have everybody change the way they dress, the way they look, what was played on top 40 radio station, changed quote unquote overnight because of Nirvana.
Another thing that we need dates on is sales figures. Did Nirvana Nevermind sell 5 million, 10 million records while he was alive? Or did it sell 30 million records while he was alive? Or
I
20
know it
million
sold 30 million. What's his
now
post-death? I don't know.
It's fucking been reissued 97 times. And
exactly.
And it's still, I work in distribution. That's what I do. Right. I fucking sell hundreds of Nirvana records every single day. No, hundreds of one Nirvana record every single day.
Right. Right.
So,
my opinion is good, and like there's a difference, and I'm going to name a couple of bands, and I'm sorry for fans who are out there. I don't mean to put them down, and I don't even know the records that well. However, there's a difference between like a Motley Crue record, a Def Leppard record, and a Helix record or a Keel record. The quality of the songs is, you could look at those records and say, well, maybe the records didn't get pushed by the company like a band like that But really, if you listen to the records, they didn't have a girls on there, or Photograph. The songs were just not as well written. It just didn't have that commercial appeal. So I guess my point being with the Nevermind record, no matter what who was first, who was second, in my opinion, there's still got hooks on those records. Come As You Are, when you hear that guitar.
Yeah, it sounds like a Killing Joke. It sounds like a Killing Joke song.
Yeah.
Which,
The
by the way,
fucking Killing
that happens to
Joke
be
ripoff.
my second favorite song on the Nirvana album, Come As You Are. I'm not a huge fan of that song, so it's funny that you chose that. But
but I'm just saying, whether it's a ripoff or whatever, maybe people didn't know the Killing Joke existed, but the record companies pushed this, so they're like, oh, this is I never heard this riff before. Wow, this guy's a genius.
Of course.
I
was being facetious.
Of course.
No, and I totally get that. But, that's just my point of it. I just think that it's still, is it a great record? I don't know if I say it's a great record, is it one of my favorite records of all time? No, it's not. So,
but I'll
you asked
say
me
this.
if I'm a fan,
Right.
I'm a fan of the record, but it's not one of my favorite records of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I'll
a Blood
say
Sugar
this,
Sex
Vin.
Magic by the Chili Peppers.
You
That's one
probably
of my
like that.
favorite records. Yeah.
Right. But
So-
Vin, I'll say this. You were talking about good, great, not so good. That's all personal opinion, right?
Yeah,
So
it's relative.
somebody else could say, I happen to think the Kill album is the best album ever invented, right? So, and the two songs that popped into my head when you were talking about this, and it goes to the extreme where these songs did very well, but I can't stomach them. And I think and these are from the 80s, and I think you might know what two songs I'm about to mention, Vin. Cherry Pie, Love Warrant, can't stomach that damn song from the day the album came out.
Bad
Medicine.
Bad Medicine,
Two
right.
songs I just friggin' hate with a passion from back in the 80s. I hated those songs. They're both on great albums, and they're probably the worst song on each of those albums, but the masses love them, right? So, but that's a personal opinion of mine, right? So, when we talk good versus great, that's all personal opinions. But I keep going back in my mind with my post that said, you can't say Nevermind, the album is overrated, right? So, except if you're Jason, I'll let Jason say no. But I say that because, and Jason, I said it before, I get hung up on that word, the way Kiss collectors get hung up on counterfeit versus bootleg. I don't like U2. Don't like U2 at all, right? But I would never walk around saying they suck, right? Because I would sound like an idiot if I said that. I'm not a Michael Jackson fan at all, right?
What?
No, I'm not a Michael
I
Jackson
went off
fan.
this podcast.
Yeah. You and me both.
Yeah.
Man,
I am
like
not
Michael
a Michael
Jackson.
Jackson fan, but I would never in a million years say that he is.
He's got some issues.
I
My
have
friend
some
has some
issues.
issues.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Let's explore that, Mike. Why don't you like
yeah.
Michael Jackson?
It's a good question. I don't know. Even in the 80s when I was listening to Madonna and Prince, I just
I do remember this. He had the Thriller record.
I did have the Thriller record, yeah. And I had the Thriller VHS, the 1 hour version of them making the video, which I thought was great.
Man, Human Nature, in my opinion, is one of the greatest songs ever written.
Yeah.
Absolutely fucking Toto.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a fucking Toto song.
And even Off the Wall, that record, I like how we're going into a Michael Jackson.
I have Off the Wall also, by the way.
Yeah.
My parents had it, and I
I was huge Michael, and I still am.
I still am a huge Michael.
I'm not a fan of his practices, whatever they may be, or what they were. That I wasn't a fan of, but whatever,
And I'll say this: I totally see and totally get why millions and millions and millions of people loved him. I see what the allure there was, what the draw was, right? So I would never sit here and say, well, Michael Jackson's overrated because I don't like him, right? Because I would sound like a complete idiot if I did that, right? And to me...
Well, just for the record, you sound like a complete idiot for not liking him. So, just for the record.
Well, for the record, if we put a list together, we could probably come up with 100 reasons why I sound like an idiot. Right? So, don't limit it to Michael Jackson. Come on, let's be honest here. Right? So,
fair point.
So, to me, the effect Michael Jackson had on pop music and dance music and all of that in the early 80s, and I know the Jackson 5 was before that, right? But the effect Michael Jackson had on pop music, I could say Nirvana had an equal effect on rock music in 1992,
I don't disagree with that.
So if you don't disagree, Sorry, Jason, you
Uh-oh.
can't say they're
Uh-oh.
overrated. You can say
Caught
you
in
hate
the
them.
trap. I hear Elvis singing "Caught in a Trap." Caught in a trap.
No, I just think Nirvana was the right place at the right time with the right record label and the right television people behind them.
But not the right record, but not the right, because you said all the right this, but not the right record. I'm not fighting you, Jason. Now I'm just in the middle of this. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not going against you, my friend.
So hold on. Michael Jackson wasn't the right place, the right time with the white
Oh,
glove
boy.
on
This
TV.
is
Of course
getting
he was.
ugly.
Okay, so so then I'm going to say Michael Jackson's overrated. That's it. I'm kidding. I don't think that.
I guess it just comes down, and I just can't escape it. I can't escape it. It comes down to me as I just don't think that record personally is good enough to be held on the pedestal that it is. And it's not that it's a terrible record. I don't think it's a terrible record. I don't.
No, you've been open.
I don't have hate for it like that. I just don't think top to bottom, like when you fucking look at Thriller or a record like even Hysteria or something like that, where every fucking song was a single on the record and every fucking song was a giant #1 hit. Look, here's a fact for you to look up. Nirvana had 2 top 40 hits?
Yeah.
They had a bunch of rock hits.
Yes, yeah.
But as far as top 40, like the real top,
I think
100
Teen Spirit and Come
Billboard,
As You Are. I think it'd be only 2.
that's it. That's it. And and they weren't even really very high on the. They weren't burning up the charts,
Right.
And none of the grunge bands were. If you look at like Alice in Chains and Soundgarden, none of those guys had real top 40 hits.
Now, Jason, you might know this better than me, right? Because I at that time, 94, 95, 96, I was also a big No Doubt fan, right?
Sure.
Loved the Tragic Kingdom album.
Sure.
And what I never knew is the song Don't Speak didn't actually even chart because it wasn't released as a single and there was certain criteria that was required.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So is that possibly why some of these bands didn't have more hits?
No,
Wasn't it a big video hit? Wasn't that a big video hit though?
Of course. It was all over the radio also.
No.
But it wasn't on, I think, a Billboard chart or whatever because it didn't meet the criteria of being released as like a physical single. I forget what the exact criteria was.
Sure.
It didn't meet certain
I gotta
criteria.
look this up.
No, I was laying
I'm
in
fact
bed.
checking this one.
Fact check me. Yeah, usually I
was-
get the Kiss stuff right, but maybe I got my No Doubt stuff wrong.
I was laying in bed one night, down a Wikipedia hole,
Okay.
and something sent me. I was reading something about Stone Temple Pilots, and there was a line that said, "Sour Girl" was Stone Temple Pilots' biggest hit, and I was like, "That's fucking
Wow.
weird." Off
Yeah,
their
that's
4th
very-
album,
Uh-huh.
and bigger than Plush. What? That
Right.
doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So I looked up the list of Stone Temple Pilots singles, and I fucking saw it. None of those songs off the first album were top 40 hits. None of them.
Interesting.
And and I saw Sour Girl was like, whatever it was. I'm
Right.
just making up a number. It was like 32 was the highest chart or something like that. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I looked up all the top, the big 5.
Right.
I looked up Alice in Chains, Stone Temple Pilots, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, and then Nirvana. And I was, Nirvana of those 5 was the most successful in the top 40. They had 2 top 40 hits. The rest of them, I think, one of them might have had one top 40 hit or something like that. None of them were in the top 10. And I was sending it to my buddy Nick. I was like, fuck it, did you realize this? And he was like, had no clue. And they all were real singles because it would say, Smells Like Teen Spirit, #1 rock radio.
Right.
Billboard top 40, like 38 or something like that. I don't know what it was, whatever it was,
So
And
it's
that's the main-
interesting.
That's
interesting.
the main, that's
Right.
mainstream chart. That's not just
Exactly.
us rock fans.
Right,
So-
exactly. So before Vinny corrects me, because I have a feeling he's just anxious to do so. So that's interesting then that Nirvana, you're saying, only had 2 top 40 hits, because at that same time, I think I have my timeline right. Get a Grip by Aerosmith was 1993. And that had Living on an Edge, Amazing. I think they had 3 or 4 singles from that.
Top 10 hits.
Yeah.
One of them, I think, might have been #2 or something like that,
Right.
And you look up Warrant from 1990 and 91, and their first album with Heaven and all. fucking number 2 hit in the country.
Yeah.
You know, Poison, Every Rose Has its Thorn, number 1. And,
Yeah.
you know, so all of these hair bands had legitimate mainstream, massive hits.
Yep.
And none of the grunge bands did. A lot of the post-grunge bands did.
Yes. But none of those songs changed the face of music.
No, I'm not debating that.
Right,
I just found it very, very interesting to me.
It is.
That, you know.
So, Vin, go ahead and correct me now. What do you want to
So
tell?
it's a little confusing, and I'm not a smart guy, so correct me on, or just figure this out. Okay.
So far,
This
we
is on the
agree with you.
Yeah, I know. Upon release, Don't Speak immediately began to receive, okay, whatever, and became the most widely played song on American radio in 1996. It reached number 1 on Billboard's Hot 100 Airplay chart and maintained that. Hold on.
Different.
Right. Maintained that position for 16 non-consecutive weeks, a record at the time. Although the record would be broken in 1980. Well, okay. Then it says here, the song remains in 3rd place with all songs with the most weeks at number 1 on the Hot 100 Airplay. For its airplay, though, Don't Speak was not allowed to chart on the Billboard Hot 100 as no commercial signal.
There you go.
But these other charts, like Adult Top 40, number 1,
right.
You know, main alternative airplay, number 2, Main Street Top 40, number 1. So I think what had happened also was, I don't know if they expanded the Billboard charts at that time because alternative music and all this other stuff. So,
right.
yeah.
But I think if you looked at the Billboard Hot 100 or whatever it was called at that time, Don't Speak never charted because it didn't meet the criteria released as a single.
Right.
And that's what I was saying to Jason. Could some of these grunge bands have done the same? Because that song always stuck in my mind as having not charted.
No, these are, so Nirvana, Smells Like Teen Spirit was number 6 on the Hot 100. So that's a bona fide hit.
Yes.
Come As You Are, 32, Lithium, 64, and You Know You're Right, 45. No other song even charted.
Wow.
About a Girl, Penny Royalty, All Apologies, Heart Check Box, In Bloom, and then a couple of a sliver in those tracks before. No, they didn't even chart in the top 100. They didn't even chart.
Yeah, but my thing is, was your Z100s at the time?
Right.
I mean, that's in New York.
That's rock radio. That's completely different. I'm talking about.
No, Z100 was our top 40 radio station.
Yeah, so that was asking, Mike, you know better than me. Were they playing the Nirvanas and the?
Yes.
Or were they playing? They were
Sure.
at the time.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That would be airplay. But we're talking about the top 100 is a combination of airplay, total airplay in the country, and I believe it was total sales at retail, and a few other criteria like that. As an officially released single. So you had Nirvana with a bona fide hit with Smells Like Teen Spirit, but the rest of the singles on the record, Come As You Are, 32, that's good performance, but nothing to write home about.
No.
Lithium, everybody knows Lithium that listened to that record, 64.
Right.
It's like looking at Kiss's track list,
Agreed.
Chart success. You had 1 or 2 songs that were in the top 10 and the rest are in the 30s, 40s, 60s or below.
Right.
But they weren't hit makers.
No, they weren't. But to me, it still doesn't change the impact that album had on society even. And, I think of this as we were talking here, Def Leppard had a huge hit in 93 or 4, I think it was 93 with Two Steps Behind, right?
Huge hit.
If you look at the CD single or the cassette single, you have to find the picture that they used on that. They look like a freaking grunge brand. They're all wearing their flannel shirts
or bands.
Whatever. Band, yeah.
A grunge brand.
A grunge brand. Gunja. All right.
A Gunja band.
You could see the years of torture. This is my payback for the earlier thing that he did to me, which I don't even remember because I'm getting older. I forget things.
At least I went to see Peter Criss. Anyway. So my point being that even the Def Leppards, who had a huge hit in 93 with Two Steps Behind, they still had that grunge look. Why? Because Nevermind changed society. Is the only way I can say it. It changed society. It changed the way people dressed. It changed the way people looked. It changed the way the music that was on the radio. That can never be overrated. That can never be quantified on a chart or anything else. What was that? It's overrated.
Look, I think there's a valid point, what Jason's saying, because I don't know if this is going to be a good comparison, but I'm going to make it anyways.
Go ahead.
Was bands like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys overrated? They changed the whole movement with the Britney Spears and all that stuff. It changed the whole music genre and movement. Like Jason, how I came to your rescue? Hold on, let me go get my cape. Let me go get my cape. Yeah. That was a lucid. Well done.
That's right.
Overruled.
One of my all-time favorite movies, by the way.
Me too.
I do want to point out Alice in Chains.
Nobody's going to answer my question. Nobody's going to comment on my.
I will go back to your comment in a moment.
Okay, go ahead.
This is quick.
Fine.
Alice in Chains never had a top 100 hit except for Check My Brain from 2009 with 2 dead members not in the band at 92. And everybody knows who Alice in Chains is.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's bizarre.
Absolutely.
So, NSYNC and Britney Spears, are they overrated?
I will say this. I don't think Britney Spears is overrated. And the reason why, to me, what she did for women in pop music in 98, 99, 2000, 2001 was no different than what Madonna did in 84. Right? It was.
I totally agree with you.
That, I don't have to be I happen to think there's a couple of Britney having a problem with my tongue.
This is great.
A couple of Britney Spears songs that I really like. But I wouldn't say she's overrated because, I know she's in the news a lot right now for the wrong reasons, unfortunately, and I won't even get into that. That's disgusting. Sure. But, the reality is she was the face of pop music probably for 10 years, I'm going to say.
Easy.
I can't say that's overrated. I might not be a fan.
But, okay.
But I very vividly, in fact, I joke about this. My friend Eddie's, he likes Britney Spears, even though he loves all these classic rock bands, but he likes Britney Spears. And I say this, and I make fun of myself all the time. My daughter was just born, 3 months old, maybe. I'm up one night feeding her. It's the middle of the night feeding. I'm putting on MTV, which existed at that time, playing videos, not the nonsense they do now. And Hit Me Baby One More Time comes on. I was not a fan of the song at all. It was 2:00 in the morning. And I said to myself, but I said it out loud, well, that's a song I'll never hear again. That's why they're playing it at 2 a.m. Well, boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I, and I make fun of myself for that one all the time.
30 million albums later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Boy, was I dead wrong with that. But look, I wasn't a fan, but how can I say that that's overrated, what she did? I can't. That's putting my bias into it. And Jason, I'm going to let his overrated for Nirvana stand, but I hear the biases coming through.
Oh, of course. There's absolute bias.
And I can appreciate that.
So do you have a different opinion based on what I said now?
Me?
Who, me?
No, Mike. I'm asking Mike about the whole overrated and how I made that connection.
No, because I'm sitting here saying I can't say that Britney Spears is overrated. Now, maybe if you get into NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, I'm not close enough to know which ones were the leaders and which ones were the followers. I know they were all huge, right? So,
but it was Justin Timberlake is arguably the Michael Jackson of his era.
Yes, absolutely. But I'll be honest, I did not know who Justin Timberlake was when he was in NSYNC. I knew who NSYNC was, but I didn't know the name Justin Timberlake.
Sure.
As a solo artist, absolutely. And to me, it almost equates to Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, who was the lead singer, and I know people knew who he was, but then he became even huge, as a solo artist. Justin Timberlake became huge as a solo artist.
Right.
But I'm
what
not
do you
close
think,
enough.
Vincent?
Yeah, what do you think, Vin?
As far as what?
Britney Spears, the boy bands,
your point.
Yeah. Are they overrated?
I don't know what the hell I think my point. I think my point backfired somewhat, but
because you expected me to say that they were overrated because I don't like them.
They're garbage and they're pop.
I don't know.
Now I'll say this.
No, you're fair. I'll say this. You're fair when it comes to, even if it's something you're not like, because I remember, with the U2 thing, and I'm a fan of U2, and I was always trying to figure out why you didn't like it, and you gave them a fair shot. You did your album listening party.
8 or 9 albums in a row.
So
That's the only thing I listened to for 2 or 3 weeks was U2. And it was torture. It was pure torture. But I said, I have this opinion.
Not a huge fan, but
But I'll say this. I had this opinion that I don't like them. And somebody said to me on Facebook, well, how much of their songs do you know? I said, well, I know the hits. And they're like, well, that's not fair. There's so many other great songs. And I said, fair point. how can I have an opinion that I don't like somebody if I've never really gave them a fair shot and listened to it? And in fairness, I found 2 or 3 songs I thought were really good, but I always say this.
They were covers.
I did not like the cover of Helter Skelter, by the way. I'll say this. I don't to this day with U2 understand why they're a stadium band. I understand why they're popular. I understand even maybe at arena level. I don't see what people see that made them a stadium band for 30 years. I don't get that. I just don't. That's another whole topic, though.
Yeah. Let's not go there.
Yeah.
Now.
But I appreciate that Jason will acknowledge that perhaps his bias is stepping in a little bit.
Oh, of course it is. It's impossible to answer any musical question without having some kind of bias. And it's, I mean, fucking Bob Dylan. He's supposed to be a god. I can't stand Bob Dylan. He means nothing.
But would you say he's overrated?
I said it once and I got fucking forget it. I got ripped a new a-hole for saying that. And listen, I have a good friend of mine who said the words, I hate Billy Joel and I hate the Eagles. And I'm just like, what human being could hate Billy Joel and the Eagles? As far as songwriting and, I don't, certain things I don't understand, but that's a matter of taste. It all comes down to, it's a matter of taste. The fact that Jason thinks they're overrated is based on his taste and what he likes. There's really no right and wrong here because opinion is what it is.
But I think there is. And I go back to counterfeit versus bootleg. And because to me, if you're talking,
would you like to discuss that? Because I have a very firm opinion on counterfeit versus bootleg.
I know you do. I know you do. And I happen to agree with your opinion, by the way. Right. But to me, when you talk about overrated or not, you have to take the personal biases out. I said I'm not a Britney Spears fan, but I would never say she's overrated, right? I'm not a Bob Dylan fan. I would never sit here and say he's overrated.
I wouldn't say Bob Dylan is overrated.
Right. So you're willing to do it,
and
for
I don't like
enough.
him.
Right, exactly.
Well,
and that's where I say I think some of your biases come in, which is okay. That happens.
The only thing, and I'll go all the way back to the beginning of the conversation. The only thing that makes Nirvana difficult for me is there wasn't enough time to see what impact they would have continued to have, or if Nirvana Nevermind would be held on the pedestal that it's held today if he hadn't killed himself.
Let me ask this question, Jason.
I got a good.
Vin referenced this before. Yeah. Quiet Riot.
Mm-hmm.
The what is it? The Mental Health album.
Mm-hmm.
What it meant to hair metal, overrated or not?
I think Quiet Riot Mental Health is an overrated record. I don't think it's very good.
You're consistent.
I don't think it's very good.
To me, that's the start of the hair metal scene.
It is.
You can't overrate that album then to me.
I don't think it's a very good record. I think it's got 2 or 3 decent songs on it, and the one of them is a cover.
I agree with you, by the way.
All right. So,
but I don't think it's overrated. Go ahead, Vin.
I think what you're saying, Jason, and maybe Mike, you agree too. If Kurt Cobain had killed himself, the record or the band would never be looked at as the way it's looked at today.
I'm not saying never. I'm saying would it be on the pedestal that it is now? Would it be a 30 million seller? Because the act of him killing himself changed.
Mm-hmm.
It changed the viewpoint of him in a lot of people's minds, and it held him up here. I don't know if he was necessarily, he was very popular, of course, and the record was very popular, but it wasn't today popular.
Yeah. I was trying to think of another record or another group, and this is really not a fair comparison because however you want to look at it, the lead singer killed himself, much, much later in life. The first Boston record, when that record came out,
right.
There's none of the other records that followed that record was as great as that first record.
That's true.
That is an incredible record. I think it changed rock music because the way the sounds that Tom Schultz got on that record, you had bands that followed like the Foreigners, what they call that corporate rock,
yep.
that's why bands like that never get into Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because the Rolling Stones, those assholes, they don't like bands like that.
Yep.
But to me, that I can never say that record is, overrated. And Boston really, what they have, 3 records total, 4, and the other records really never. It's not a really fair comparison, but I was just trying to think of big first records, huge impact on the industry, and then it really just fell off. Now,
I was going to concede actually the point until I thought a little further in that, which was the fact that there wasn't a qualifying event that launched something into the stratosphere beyond what it was when the guy was alive. That
for the Boston record,
Nirvana, that Boston record was huge, and there wasn't a Brad Delp didn't.
Gene Simmons is here, huh?
Gene Simmons is there. Brad Delp didn't kill himself, the next year, and the record had sold 5 million, and then it sold 30 million. It sold 30-40 million
out of the gate, so to speak.
Well, they did not even out of the gate, but over the years, there wasn't a qualifying event. With Nirvana, that record sold so many, and then within 2 years, the guy killed himself, and it shot through the roof. There was definitely some impact on that. I mean, it definitely had an impact on that. So I just, I don't know. Look, I understand for sure. Nevermind had a huge impact on the music scene at the time. It was a weird, unique kind of set of circumstances around the whole thing that it almost taints it for me. It almost taints it. It was a corporate push. The band didn't sound, it was a totally different sound from the previous record. The guy who wrote the songs really wasn't striving to achieve that. Then he kills himself, and he's the god among gods. That's a weird set of circumstances, and probably unique.
Yeah,
Vincent was trying to think of another situation that's similar, and I don't really know if there is one. It's a really unique situation, But
look, I'll agree with you, and I'll say this.
Well, they say Jimi Hendrix, even this, let's say, got extremely, like, he didn't have the kind of success
that's a good
until
one. Yep,
so
that's
true.
That's true. But I'll say this: I think for all the reasons you just outlined, Jason, Nirvana as a band and Kurt Cobain as a songwriter, singer, person has been elevated greater than he would have been had he stayed alive and had they kept putting out albums. But I do personally feel that album, Nevermind, would still hold the same stature that it does, because
it would have been a Boston debut, is what you think.
And I think it has a greater impact than Boston, because, like Vince said, yes, it might have ushered in corporate rock, but correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you guys know better than me. People didn't change their hairstyle because of Boston. People didn't change the way they dressed because of Boston. Nevermind had that impact.
Well, maybe. But what you got to remember, early 70s and stuff like that, you had the John Denvers that were popular.
Mm-hmm.
You had a lot of artists, that soft mellow
Emerson,
rock.
Lake and Palmer.
Yeah, I mean,
you go listen to Emerson. Lake and Palmer.
You go listen. Yeah.
It's sad that we think that.
Manilow. Yeah. So maybe it's not exactly apples to apples but there was not the extreme. Yeah, I don't think that, like, who was it? Janie Lane, right? That was his name, right?
Mm-hmm. Janie.
I'm getting old. Yeah, he said he walked into Columbia or whatever, and the whole had all these, the
right. It went from Cherry Pie being up, and now it was whatever it was, Alice in Chains or whatever.
Alice in Chains, Dirt.
I don't know if that happened, when they, when Boston's record came, but look, it's all about dollars and cents, and they have a I don't know now, because the record industry is so much different, but back then, they had, a stranglehold.
Mm-hmm.
One of your favorite artists, Ted Nugent, but that's a whole other.
God, that's another whole one altogether.
Yeah.
I still don't think he belongs in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. My opinion has not changed.
Yeah.
Your opinion has not changed. What?
He does not belong in the Rock and Roll Hall. He's not in. I know that, but I also don't think he belongs in.
Oh wow.
Ted Nugent.
And I'll say this is why. This has always been my opinion. I have to play by the rules, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
It is
That's a Freudian slip, isn't it?
He's become Cindy Brady overnight. Hey, let me get you your tongue twister book.
I have to play by the rules that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame put in front of you.
Okay.
Right? So somebody like Stevie Nicks, she's in as a solo artist. She's in with Fleetwood Mac because they see those as two different entities.
Sure.
Ted Nugent had different entities in his career. I think Ted Nugent, strictly as a solo artist, had like a 4-year peak in that late 70s where he was on top of the world, but it's pretty much done nothing since then in terms of impact. And to me, that's not a rock and roll. Now, my bar for Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is enormously high also, I'll say that. Or for all Hall of Fame, sports, music, or whatever. I don't think that equates. And I had Chikini on, a couple of years ago, and we debated this, and he strongly feels that Ted Nugent should be in the Hall of Fame. And he started
Of course he does.
Right, of course. And he started bringing up the damn Yankees. And I said, no, you can't, because the damn Yankees is a different band, and the Hall of Fame sees that as different. So that's why
true.
I have that opinion. Maybe the full body of work, if the Hall of Fame changed their mind, I would say, yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. But this is a whole different topic right now.
I'm starting trouble.
You're starting trouble, exactly. Look, I'll say this. I don't know. Nirvana, I guess, belongs in the Hall of Fame because of the impact of the album.
I think Nirvana belongs in the Rock and Roll Hall.
Yeah, I think they do because of the impact of that one album, and I equate it to, on a much huger scale, the Sex Pistols. The Sex Pistols, to me, belonged in the Hall of Fame because they also carved out this niche in music that really wasn't there beforehand, or certainly not as popular as it was. Not that punk was ever huge, but it was the groundwork to what came after that.
Well, I mean, I was just trying to compare, the careers of solo Ted Nugent to the Sex Pistols and what you said. So Ted Nugent has 2 or 3 good solo years under his belt where he's influencing every guitarist under the planet, under the sun, not under the planet, on the sun.
You're becoming me now.
That's right. And the Sex Pistols had one record?
One record, yep.
And it influenced, and
I'm enjoying this. Keep going, Jason.
How is that?
What's your Venmo?
Now?
What's your Venmo account?
How is that different? And full disclosure, I'm not arguing for Ted Nugent to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So what? But what's the difference there?
I guess in my mind, maybe wrongly so, I don't recall growing up in the 80s with anybody saying to me, I started playing guitar because of Ted Nugent.
Yeah, but you're talking about you're in New York, different markets. He might be more Midwest kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Maybe. Maybe. But you heard Jimmy Page.
What, you heard people walking? Yeah, but did you hear people walking the street saying,
right.
I love them damn Sex Pistols? I mean, maybe in the 70s, if you grew up and you were going down to this place, you know what I mean?
But in the 80s, it became a fashionable thing to cover Sex Pistol songs. Everybody saw.
I started to say, when I first heard the Sex Pistols,
what Motley Crue covered Anarchy in UK,
Motley Crue and Megadeth.
Boy, you think I was drinking before this tonight?
You were.
Now back to Nirvana. I do have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
If Kurt Cobain was still alive, but Nirvana broke up in 1994, and Dave Grohl went on to do what he's doing now, do you think Kurt Cobain would approve or disapprove?
That is a great question.
Because there is no more corporate rocker today in music.
I agree with you there.
Fucking Dave Grohl gets himself involved in everything.
Everything.
And I'm not knocking Dave Grohl. I like
me neither. And I'll say this: I saw the Foo Fighters 6 weeks ago, and it was borderline one of my top 10 favorite concerts of all time. I thought it was a great show. I love the Foo Fighters. I went to see David Grohl on his book thing. Great evening. Would Kurt Cobain approve? Maybe not, because he didn't buy into that.
He didn't like that.
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
And I was just reading something a few weeks ago about In Utero. There's the second song, the name escapes me, but the second song on the album, it has a co-write by David Grohl. And supposedly Kurt Cobain was like, let me throw him a bone. He really likes this riff. I'll throw him a bone, and wasn't even in love with the riff, at least at first. I think he eventually came around. So would Kurt Cobain approve of that? Very possibly not.
Yeah,
Very
I
possibly
think,
not.
you know, I don't think he's a corporate rock kind of dude.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
you
agree.
know,
I agree with
you know.
you. Saying that, I mean, I love the Foo Fighters. I'm not
Yeah.
glad Kurt Cobain died, but I'm
They call him
glad.
Coke
Shut
Cobain.
up.
Coke Cobain.
Coke. He's Coke Cobain.
But
Has
I am glad I have
nothing
the
to do
Foo
with his drug
Fighters.
use.
That's
Coke Cobain.
all right, this is done. That's
Off
it.
the rails.
That's a good book, by the way.
That is a great book.
That's a great
Rudy
book.
Sarzo kept impeccable
Yeah.
notes. I
Yes.
love that
Yeah.
guy.
That's a great book. If
Oh, I
anybody
didn't know
hasn't
about
read it.
that book.
Oh, really? No, it's a great book.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah?
go
When
check
did
that
that
on
come out?
Amazon. Oh, a long time.
Oh, years
ago.
ago.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
probably 10
Oh,
years
it's
ago.
fun. The dude kept like a journal.
Yeah.
And has all of these incredible notes about, you know, what's his fucking name?
Randy
Ozzy Osbourne?
Rhodes?
No, fucking
Randy Rhodes.
Randy Rhodes. Yeah, fucking
Oh,
Randy
yeah.
Rhodes. I don't know why that was Rudy.
Yeah.
Sarzo,
See, I
Randy
rub
Rhodes.
off on people as
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow,
Or, you
that's
know, he's
that's embarrassing.
Jason, you should know when we were younger, you used to call him Rudy Starzo. You know?
Rudy Starzo.
That's what I
Yeah.
would say. And
Hey,
fans-
have you talking about books, Vincent? Have you ever read Bob Daisley's book, For Fact's
No.
Sake?
I have not
No.
read that. I need to
Oh
read
my
that, yes.
God, you've
Oh,
got to
shit.
go buy it right now.
2 Amazon purchases tonight.
It's
All right.
it's expensive, but it is it's unbelievable.
Yes, I've heard that.
You
many
will,
times.
your jaw will be on the floor. Of course, we know a lot of the stories, you know, being told over the years, but it'll blow your mind. It'll
Wow.
just blow your mind. Let's just say, had there been no Bob Daisley and Randy Rhodes, or Bob Daisley and Jakey Lee, or Bob Daisley and Zach Wilde, there would be no Ozzy Osbourne.
Oh, but wait, hold on.
And-
Bark
and
at
let-
the
and
Moon.
let-
Ozzy wrote every song by himself. On
Every
the Bark
single
at the
also-
one of them by himself.
But let me say
Moon.
this: if there was no Sharon Osbourne, there'd be no Ozzy Osbourne. 'Cause she
Actually,
really
if there
controlled
was
that
no
whole thing.
Dana Strum, there would be no Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah.
Really, I don't know that connection.
Dana Strum introduced Randy Rhodes to
Oh, I didn't know
Ozzy
that.
Osbourne.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
I
and he
did not
also
know that.
introduced Jakey Lee. He got Jakey Lee the job as well.
I did not know that either.
So Dana Strum I was talking to Pat Lucero, my buddy Pat Lucero, the other day, who's Mark Slaughter's childhood friend, and I said, "Isn't it weird to think that we may just be thinking about Ozzy as a footnote in music history as the lead singer of Black Sabbath who never did anything else had it not been for Dana Strum?"
That's very true.
It's a bizarre thought.
Mhm. It is. It really is. Because people forget when Ozzy left Sabbath, everybody thought he was done with. He was washed up.
Right.
He was never going to have a good solo career. And obviously, we know what happened.
The
but no,
team that
that's
was
true.
put around him, I mean, the man has a unique voice and all of that stuff,
Yeah.
but his talents beyond that, as far as being a musician, I mean, they're just not there. And he has to have a team around him that are great. And he had the best teams around him. And Bob Daisley is a fucking lyrical
Agreed.
genius.
Now,
So
just for the record, and you probably know better than I do, both you guys. Wasn't it Ozzy who came up with really the melodies to the song, though?
some
Some.
okay.
he would
Yeah,
hum
okay.
some melodies, or like Bob talks about this in the book. He would say
Yeah.
Ozzy would come in the room and he would go, "Bark at the Moon. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, let's write a song around it."
Mm-hmm.
And Bob would write lyrics. Jake came up with the riff, and Bob would write lyrics, and that would be
Didn't
the
Jake
hook
have
line.
the Bark at the Moon riff before
I
he
think
actually...
he had the riff
Right.
before. That's where he had the riff before.
All right, so you have the riff, you have the lyrics, but who's singing?
He would come up with some of
Was that
that.
Ozzy or is that Bob Daisley? That's what I'm.
Some
and I'm
of
not
it's Bob.
I'm just yeah.
Mhm.
Now, if you get the book, seriously, it's if you're interested in this, it's a great read. But
Mhm.
he gives Ozzy credit. He would say, "Look, Ozzy would come in and he would hum Suicide Solution to us.
Mhm.
I've got this song in my head and it goes, meow, bah, or no, he didn't do the guitar riff. He had the lyrical structure. And I think the riff was something that Randy was doing in rehearsals one day. And Ozzy was like, that's a great riff. And he's like, "Oh, I'm just practicing, that's a great riff. And I've got this melody in my head," and he would hum it to Bob, and Bob would write all the lyrics,
Mm.
But there are many times where the entire song would be written by Bob and the guitar player at the time.
Yep.
And they would just play it for Ozzy and he would regurgitate it,
Mm.
so.
How? Vomit?
So could we say that Kurt Cobain was a better songwriter than Ozzy Osbourne?
oh, Kurt Cobain was a better songwriter than Ozzy Osbourne because he's not a songwriter.
Right.
Even though he's credited on a lot of records as being a songwriter, he didn't write hardly any of those lyrics in Black Sabbath. That's
right.
that's all Geezer Butler.
That's Geezer. Yeah, absolutely.
All Geezer Butler. So,
so could we say Ozzy Osbourne is overrated? Is that the next?
Yes, I think yes, I think so personally.
As a songwriter, he's overrated.
Yes.
I don't think he's overrated as a vocalist and as a performer because he's got one of the most unique voices out there.
Agreed.
And when you put a team
and one of the
around
most unique.
Yes, that's a joke. Vin and I always did. Whenever he was on stage, he'd be clapping his hands.
Yeah. But I think he's over. If he's getting credit for writing those songs, he would absolutely be overrated because he didn't write those songs.
Yeah, like you said, without that list of people, I'm not sure that Ozzy's solo career is anything what it was.
That's right. I agree.
Yet he's a solo artist, Ozzy Osbourne. So for that reason, I say as a solo artist, he's probably overrated, even though I would say he belongs in the Hall of Fame. But people hold him at a certain pedestal, and I love Ozzy. Love those first two albums with Randy. So don't mistake in what I'm saying at all.
Same here.
But they're not as great as they are because of Ozzy.
That's
they're
right.
As great as they are because of plenty of other people.
That's right. Yeah. That is exactly
Now I don't know that
they're really great because of three people.
Yes,
but
in
three
fairness,
people that played that.
I don't know that I would listen to it if it wasn't Ozzy singing and it was somebody else who didn't have his personality. So
it was the perfect team.
It was
the perfect
really
team.
Was.
And and of course, and if you read Daisley's book, you'll hear how pissed those three guys were that record became Ozzy Osbourne, Blizzard of Oz, and not the Blizzard of Oz,
which is what it was supposed to be.
Which was what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
well,
we are way off track.
No, but that's okay. That's okay. You got me to say maybe Ozzy might be overrated, so I'm sure I'll get a bunch of shit for that. So people will be like, "What? Nevermind's not overrated to Mike, but Ozzy is. He knows nothing. Unsubscribe.
Well, it's a criteria. There has to be a criteria right there, right?
Right. And that's what I'm saying. So I'm trying hard to take my personal opinion and preference out. Mm-hmm. I love Ozzy. Blizzard of Oz might be one of the top 10 greatest albums, certainly of the decade, maybe in that whole genre.
Sure.
But it's not because of Ozzy. And that's my point.
It's not. I don't want to say it's not because of Ozzy.
Yeah, it's not because of Ozzy only.
It's not just because of Ozzy.
That's fair. It's not just because of Ozzy. Yes, absolutely agree. So I'm going to stand by Nevermind, not overrated. Nirvana as a band, I could listen to it. I could listen to people say maybe a little overrated. I will take it to my grave that album changed everything from pop culture to the way people dress, their haircuts, and what I heard on the radio, and that can never be overrated in my mind. But we will have to agree to disagree, Jason.
It's your podcast.
No,
I'm just kidding.
I invited you because I knew you had an opposing opinion, and I want that.
That's right. It's a valid argument, and it's tough to argue against.
Right.
Just because of the impact of the record, and because of my personal opinion of it just really wasn't as great of a record to me as it seemed to be to everybody else.
And that I could all live with. Vin, last question I have, and one for you. I think we were talking about this a few weeks ago. You said before you play in cover bands that do songs from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Have you ever had Nirvana songs in your set list? And if so, how does the crowd react to those compared to when you're doing Led Zeppelin or I know you do like Here I Go Again by Whitesnake. Do you have any Nirvana songs in the set?
I'm glad you asked me that because I'm just looking at my list for next week's rehearsal, and I have to learn "Come As You Are" and "About a Girl" as a little medley or to doing something.
Okay.
But overall, I've done "Smells Like Teen Spirit" with my band and other bands, and it always goes over well.
So people get up and they dance to Here I Go Again, and then they're just as excited to hear Smells Like Teen Spirit?
It all depends on the crowd. You got to play the crowd. If you go into like an older crowd, who's going to want to hear like Grand Funk Railroad, you're not playing Nirvana.
Right.
But if you go into maybe, crowd in their mid to late 30s, early 40s, then you might want to do some of the grunge stuff,
right.
Mix of, it depends on what the type of band is, but you really got to play to the crowd.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
However, a Foo Fighters song is more likely to go over better than a Nirvana song.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See, I always
Foo Fighters is more mainstream popular.
Yeah, and it's True. And they had a lot more chart success. They had a ton of hits.
Yes,
and album after album after album. And let's also face it, those songs aged very well. You know, some songs don't age very well, but
And I don't think people look at the Foo Fighters as a certain moment in time, right? Because they've been around 25 years with hits for many of them, as opposed to, I think, Nirvana, people look at it as 1992 to 1994. It's a certain moment in time. It's that flannel. It's the dreary, depressive feeling that a lot of music had, and people associate Nirvana with that. But I would have assumed if you were playing some of these shows and you did Whitesnake, and then you were doing a Led Zeppelin song, and then you did a Nirvana song, based on the comments I see online, I would have thought people would be throwing tomatoes at you for doing Nirvana.
Well, one of the things I want to comment on Nirvana very quickly, because it's something I witnessed, you know, was my brother was, I think, 13, I think, when that album came out. And not to get into his personal business, but he was going through, you know, his thing as an early teenager. My parents were getting divorced. I was 19 at the time. So a 19-year-old and 13-year-old are handling things very differently. And as a 13-year-old, he had he may have had all this internal, he didn't know like how to, maybe express his feelings, or he had this stuff, and he related a lot to this type of music. You know what I mean? I don't think at that time he wanted to hear, nothing but a good time. You know what I mean?
And it's funny that you just said that, because I'm thinking as you're saying this, but I enjoyed hearing Nothing But a Good Time. And I swear on my life, that was the song that went through my mind. And I also enjoyed hearing Smells Like Teen Spirit.
So I think also depending on what, because, Jason said he had a great childhood. I'm not saying my brother had a bad childhood. And again, I don't mean to go into, I'm just remembering why he connected. And he tells me why he connected with those. And I remember him telling me, like, his friends came over one day and they were smashing some of his like hair metal, and now he's all pissed off. He's like, I wish I was so stupid. Why did I let them smash those records? I was just being, I was trying to be cool. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
It's sacrilege, first of all, to smash any record, even if it's a Manilow record. I'm sorry. I'm a big fan of Manilow.
I know you're a big fan of Manilow, yeah.
So, but anyways, I just wanted to make that as whether that weighs into the overrated, underrated thing, but just how an impact on somebody's life too, based on the feel of the record or the lyric or whatever, or the tone that's coming out, So,
and I think that speaks a lot to what I was trying to say was, I'm sure there was a segment of people that is exactly how that Nirvana, they felt isolated because there was, there wasn't music there was, but as far as accessible music on the radio and stuff like that, that wasn't there, because it was Poison and Motley Crue and Whitney Houston and, and all of that stuff. But these guys, these people, not guys, guys and girls, they wanted something that spoke to them, because that's what they were feeling, and they weren't feeling nothing but a good time, or, oh, I want to dance with somebody. Yeah. So that really, it really spoke to them, and they were like, finally something for me. But it couldn't have been 90% of the population. That's why I think a lot of it was bandwagon jumping. That was my first point, was oh, these guys are liking this band, maybe I should like this band. And it was being pushed and forced and that sort of stuff, so I don't know how much of that was organic and how much of that was real.
I think that's a very fair point. And like Vince said earlier, that's all music cycles are like that. So, but I think that's a very fair point. I think we should probably wrap this up. We're going almost 2 hours at this point.
I got 3 minutes to get ready for my bass lesson.
You got 3 minutes. All right. So tonight I want you to play "Come As You Are" on bass.
That's right.
Yeah. Lithium, right? And
I think I'll pass out if my bass station says, I was thinking about teaching you a Nirvana song. I'll be like, what? Where did that come from?
Exactly. But I think what's good about this conversation is we have three, I think, slightly different opinions from each other, right? One way, Jason, you're the other. Vin's probably somewhere in the middle, closer to me, somewhere in the middle. But and I think they're all valid, and that's one of the things that I love, is that everybody's entitled to an opinion, except for Jason saying that they're overrated is wrong.
Understood.
But besides that, everything
I'll
else,
accept that.
All other opinions are valid. I'm curious when people watch this back to see what they say. I guarantee you, people are just going to say Nirvana sucks. And as soon as I see that, that's a totally useless comment to me. Don't say Nirvana sucks. You could say, I don't like Nirvana. I don't like any of their songs. I'm curious to see what other people think about overrated or not, especially given the context of what we were talking about here. Think back to the impact in the early 90s, think back to what it meant in pop culture, etc. But I'm curious to see what other people think, overrated or not. Say they suck all you want and for your own purposes, but keep that separate.
Good luck.
Yes, good luck. It's never going to happen. Exactly. Anyway, I want to thank you both for doing this. Jason, let's hope we see the record in 6-9 months or whatever once you get
No.
it.
Let's hope we see it by January.
Okay, even better. That'll be great. But what I was going to say is whether it's 6 months, 3 months, 9 months, it's going to be worth the wait. Your product always is top shelf.
Appreciate it.
And by the time this is released, your song better be out there. Okay.
Yes, it will be.
I don't want no lollygag in here. Don't make
Good word, lolly. That's gonna be the next title of my song, lollygagging.
Don't make me have to call you from the Kiss Cruise to say, "Where's that song? Why isn't it been released yet?" So
you better not be lollygagging.
Are you sure we're not live? I just sold a Slaughter record.
All right.
There you go.
Awesome. Very good.
Awesome.
That's great news. All righty, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate it. Leave your comments below. Vin, go enjoy your bass lesson. Jason, always a pleasure having you on. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Later.
All right. Later.
All righty. There you have it. I'd like to thank Jason and Vincent for joining me, having a great conversation about Nirvana's Nevermind album and if it's overrated, as well as the entire music scene, grunge, hair metal, and everything else in the early 90s. That was a lot of fun. Thanks a lot, guys. Also, make sure you check out KissMyWaxRecords.com for the Slaughter Fear No Evil album, set to be released at the start of the new year. Also, check out Vincent LaRussa's new song, Girl, with his band, Wicked Revival. It's a great song. I think you guys are going to really love it. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening to one of my podcasts, subscribe over there as well. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you all next time.